lot of fads out there these days, but there's also a lot of power in understanding a fad before you just go and complete that fad and swing for the fence, as they say, and hope it works, hope it sticks. Throwing everything at the wall and hoping something sticks. I, many years ago, recently have obviously tweaked that and bettered that for not only myself but my clients. But years ago, I coined the my hub style bedding designs. And if you follow along with the channel, you'll see these, how I design these and why I feel so strongly about the design and the how these hub style bedding designs really influence a property and when done correctly. But one thing that I always try to go the extra mile to and do is to make sure that my clients understand the way that they need to be cut per a design, whether that's my design or someone else's. You have to understand the directional when it comes to like hinge cutting, for example. Hinge cutting is one of those fads. Very powerful, very powerful tool, very powerful fad, but it's also something that's handled incorrectly, and a lot of times, probably the majority of the times, it's not obviously a something that the clients or the landowners are intentionally doing. They were just told to hinge cut. They weren't told how to exactly hinge cut. Now, with that being said, as you can see behind me here, these are two hinge cuts that were right here, and the contour was a little bit tricky on this one, and they're stretched a little bit farther than I would like. Obviously, I'd like my cambium layer just tucked up here just a little bit more, but obviously it's working. I've already got new sprouts off the trunk here, off the tree, and the telltale sign is if you come back in. These have been done a month and a half now in this area, and come back in and you look, and your top of your tree is all green and all leaved up, and it's starting to already regenerate along the trunk. That means it was a success. Failures on the side of it are if you go in, and to me it's when these properties are left behind with what I call the tornado effect. And what I mean by the tornado effect is these, just because the information is out there, and it's there's so much information about just cut kind of thing. It's like my food plot theory, as you hear me talk about, is just plant it. Well, there's a lot of damage that can be done with that, and probably more so on the fad of the hinge cutting, is because once those trees are cut, you can't correct it like you can correct a food plot by adding rye to it and salvaging a fall on a failed food plot. That's not the case on hinge cutting, guys. Is when it's done, it's done. You've taken a 20-year life cycle out of that tree, or possibly even more depending on the species. So you want to make sure that you really research, really reach out to, and what I highly recommend doing is, if you're going to have someone that designs the property, hopefully one of the key factors that you can tell if you're working with the right person, I always tell my clients, and when speaking to folks, is always one of the ways that you can tell that you're working with the right person is that you should be getting a proposal at the end. You should be getting someone that gives you a proposal for them to do the work, or has like I do, has the right people that I trust to do my different phases, such as hinge cutting, my food plot work. Once I implement the design to get them into place, and then obviously the client, or my recommended service, my subs, if you will, are the ones that take over, and they continue on working hand in hand with that client. But like in my case, is my subs, they know how my hinge cutting has to be. I have some of those travel to different states, but most of them are, I find that it's best to work with kind of centrally locate those subs in a certain area and find someone that really understands. Because if you were to take my design and that's not implemented correctly in a bedding area situation, like hinge cutting, for example, not directional hinge cutting, these hub style designs can shut them off and they don't perform like they should. So fads are great. It releases a bunch of information out there to the industry, but there's also the side of it that a fad is just that. It's just done without really knowing the power of what you're creating and why you're creating it. And that all comes with through like my analysis package. After your boots are on the ground, our boots are on the ground together, you understand why that bedding area is there to begin with, and why the directional hinge cut has to be done the way it has to do or be done, and these low hinge cuts are created, not high hinge cuts, and not over hinge cutting, you know, and being left with, if you hire that service out, or being the one that creates these, you know, ends up creating this tornado effect. So something very strongly to think about. We're going to be, obviously, this time of the year, we don't do a lot of the hinge cutting because of the oak wilt, but we do some of the areas, obviously, with the maple and stuff like that, depending on the contour of the land and the species that are there. And obviously, that's our main goal, is to not leave the client, you know, lead them down the road of losing some other trees, just, you know, in attempts to create a bedding area. You don't want to, you know, to spread oak wilt around or anything like that. So with that said, is just make sure before you start these fads, whether it's a hinge cutting situation in the bedding area, whether it's a food plot, whether all these, you know, you're gathering this information online like a lot of us do, make sure that that information, that fad, if you will, has to fit your property. If it doesn't, you're really going to be upset with the outcome. And it's something, especially hinge cutting, that can, you know, is horrible, I guess, as it sounds, but it can destroy your property. From what it was, it can actually make it worse. Now, obviously, your goal is to not make it worse, is to make it better with habitat improvements. That's why we call them improvements. Anytime that you can, you know, work hand in hand with somebody and they can send you in the right direction instead of, you know, backwards, that's the main goal. But like I said, one of those fads is doing these designs from above, never setting foot on the property. And when you tell somebody to hinge cut, they get into an area and they interpret that hinge cut the way that they see it, not the way that you've seen it and you've learned. And that's why I try to go the extra mile, even if before my clients, if they take that design and you know, them and then the family members are out and they're trying to implement that, if I'm in the area, I will take the saw and go make sure that they understand correctly on how to create those, why you should have the habitat hook, or, you know, make one yourself, so you can pull these trees down in the right area so it's done safely. And at the end of the day, these trees are definitely in the right spots, and you're not shutting off corridors inside these bedding areas. And the power is low, and so you can get all of the the regeneration is at reachable heights instead of, you know, 6 feet in the air. And it's obviously a very powerful tool. It's just it's one of those, like I said, it's one of those fads. There's many of them out there. It doesn't take long to find them. But if you're working with the right person, such as what I try to do with my clients, is I try to take the air out of that, because it's something that obviously that I have learned, have experienced. I failed at years of doing this, and now feel pretty strongly about. Obviously, I'm recommending this to my clients, and this stuff works. That's why I put it out on this channel. That's why you guys follow along, and that's why we've got this strong of a season, even with recouping here from the COVID situation, on the books as we do now, is because it's that I think it's that honest approach, and I can take that failure step out, that school of hard knocks, if you will, going back to that couple of videos ago. I released was actually loading up a video one day and seen a video come on about kind of the school of hard knocks and what you need to do when you're implementing some improvements on your property. And like I said in that video, is the gentleman actually recommended that you take 10 different opinions, and you implement all of those, and you learn the hard way. So if you take 10 different ideas, you find the best one, and you fail at it, and then you recoup and you go, well, I don't agree with that at all. And obviously that's my profession, to help you not fail. But that misleading information, those myths, those situations are exactly what destroy habitat and that outlook. Now obviously that gentleman doesn't have the experience outside of his own property, and he's not traveling the country like I am, and obviously have to stand behind the work that I design, the implementation that I put on these farms. And even if I'm not the one doing these hinge cuts, and these hinge cuts are being done by subs that I recommend doing the work, and they're not working, obviously word of mouth is your best friend or your worst enemy, especially in this industry. So don't go down the road of just throwing a bunch of ideas at the wall. And I've done videos like this before, and I'll do probably 100 more of them. But there's a lot of powerful things out there. Hinge cutting, huge tool, but can be very, very devastating if done incorrectly and at the wrong time of the year, and a directional hinge cut is not taken into place, and these tornado effects, like I call them, are created. And then just plan on buying another can of saw gas, because you're going to have to go in and clean them up to get them to perform. And less hinge cutting is better. If it's a first time situation, take my recommendation here, and a first time hinge cutter should always do less, not more, and then survey it. And even if you have to add to that area or that bedding area improvement that you're doing, obviously add to that the following year. Don't go overboard with it, because you can destroy these. Now, if you'd like any more information on my hub style bedding, feel free to reach out, drop a comment below, or I try to my evenings and my weekends that I don't have clients are my times to obviously catch up on emails and return social media messages. And I'd rather answer a couple questions than obviously I can't recommend where you do it, how that needs to be done, how big these these hub style bedding areas are, because it has to fit your lay of the land. Obviously I usually run them off on about a half acre on my my doe bedding, that it's closer to your feeding. But it all depends on contour, guys, and creating that depth of cover and making sure that it fits the contour. And that is why you have to you have to take this information that's out there and dissect it and look at who it's coming from, and if they're doing this full-time or part-time. And I learn on every property. I do. I've got a customer right now that I'm going to be reaching out to here shortly, and just did a property the other day. And I've been doing this for years now, and I do this full-time. And I just did a property the other day. It was like, that needs to be implemented. I think that would work on that parcel that I did before. And I'll be reaching out, and that gentleman's going to get that service done for free, because I think you just learn as you go. And I feel pretty fortunate, be blessed enough to have lived in the right places and traveled the country, and lived in Illinois for 4 years there, and really lived right next to mature deer, and free range settings, and really understood how things work and what doesn't. And this tool right here behind me is like I said, one of those fads, but it's a tool that is a huge tool when done right in the right areas, after it's designed by the right person. So take that into consideration. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out, and look forward to helping you guys bust these myths, and make sure that they're these fads, and make sure the information is tied to these fads, and make sure you guys succeed.